Hello and welcome to another episode of the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors. This week I drive my favorite car. Kyle drives one of his favorite cars. There's a ton of Porsche news, and there's an interesting new Kia. But first, a word from our sponsor. Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY car fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. It's okay, because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything: brakes, headlights, cold air intakes, whatever you need, and it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need, at the prices you'll love, guaranteed fit every time. eBay, things people love. Okay, welcome back. So, Kyle, starting things off, you drove a new car, or is it just a car with a new name? I don't really know how to describe this.
It is a whole new car. It's one of the industry's favorite terms, the first ever Kia K4. Although I guess actually the K4 existed in other markets. So yeah, your point remains. It's a new name for our market. This is the replacement for the Forte, or in Canada, this is now the only sedan you can get from Kia. The only car.
They missed the opportunity to just make it easy for everyone and blend the names, and it could have been the K Forte.
It's true. Or K9. Wait, nope, that's already been done.
The K4. It could even be like K4TE or something.
Or just give it a name, because all the SUVs and everything else have actual names.
Mask face.
Yeah. So it's new. It's big. Even though it's a compact, it's still quite large. It sits on the same platform as the Hyundai Elantra, so it's very similar in size. It's like an inch wider, but it looks bigger because the styling makes it just elongated, whereas the Elantra is pretty low and has kind of a more traditional sedan shape to the back end. This looks like a liftback, but it's a regular sedan. It also has kind of an Elantra look to the front, if I'm being honest, because of where its DRLs are and how the lights interact with the shape of the hood. So we were driving this, and it was only the non-turbo engine, the 2-liter inline-4 hooked up to a CVT, and it is a good compact economy car. It's more expensive than it used to be, but you get a lot of tech inside. It's just really slow. It's really slow. The turbo isn't available for us to drive yet. That'll come soon.
How slow is it compared to other entry engines like a 4-cylinder Civic or a Corolla without the hybrid? Is it slower than those?
Yes. Well, actually, I don't think I've actually driven a regular version of the non-turbo Civic, this entire generation. I have, and I guess this is just as slow as an Elantra, unsurprisingly. The Corolla is a little quicker, especially because it has that CVT with the actual first gear. So I find it picks up pretty nicely. Sentra might be around here. It's fine.
Impreza is probably around here if you don't get the big engine.
Yeah, so it's fine. It's just when you're on hills and stuff, you floor it, and it doesn't really pick up speed. It just gets louder. Excuse me. So I like the design. I like the interior a lot more than the Elantra. There's a lot of good standard tech in terms of a big touch screen and some other things. But the weird thing is there's been some cost cutting to make this happen. There's no automatic climate control until you get the turbo engine. It's
a lot.
Fully manual, and it's buttons. So you have a button to press, and you get one of 4 blue lights or 4 orange. And even on the coldest setting with the highest fan, it was cool. We were in Austin. It was mid 90 degrees Fahrenheit, so it was very hot, and it took a long time to cool down the cabin.
All right, well, before we move on, just something about the style. I mean, you're right. It does have that weird kind of square at the back that makes it look a bit like a fastback. But the front end, you're right. I see the Elantra headlights, but then it has sort of the Kia SUV lying down.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, and maybe you'll see it and never unsee it like I can't or not, but to me, it looks like an 80s hair rocker. Like it has the eyes, and that's like the black eye makeup that they'd put like coming down from their eyes down like onto their, it'd be like down here.
Oh, so it's a member of KISS.
Or Alice Cooper.
Or yeah, okay.
Sure,
All
Kate will
right.
love those references.
Yeah. So, so
Welcome to my Nightmare Forte edition.
yeah, it's to summarize, it's a good car. I'm not sure if it's class leading, but yeah, great commuter car.
Speaking of class leading, on to our next car, the Cadillac CT5-V Blackwing. And no one can argue with me about class leading because name me another supercharged V8 luxury sedan with a manual option. There's
Oh, you
one.
drove the manual?
No, I had the 10-speed auto, but as far as supercharged
Ooh.
goes, it's still the only one too. Everything's either gone turbo, hybrid, turbo hybrid. The putting a blower on the front's gone, and it's not long for the world here either. It's dead in the Corvette. It's dead in the Camaro this year. It's just left here in the Escalade, and then it'll be dead probably when they both get redesigned.
And there's still a Hellcat Durango for the rest of the year.
That's dead this year too. I'm
But
talking,
yeah.
I'm talking.
But yeah, I guess
rolling
you're
into
right. Like
25.
General Motors is the only one that still has a supercharger anywhere because Volvo got rid of the twin charged engine a while back too.
And last I checked, the Durango wasn't a sedan. Maybe it is. I don't know.
If you slam it low enough, it's basically.
So when I drove the manual 2 years ago, I loved the vehicle. I said when people say, "What's your favorite car?" and that's like such a terrible question. We had a whole episode about that. But if I say all around, I usually pick this one because it can be very comfortable and it can act just like a CT5, just like a luxury midsize sedan if you put everything into it.
So that's the question that I have for you because I get your opinion. I think our tastes differ slightly, but I get what you're saying because the old one was a great all-rounder. My main criticism about it was that the interior just never felt special enough. Like specifically the tech and stuff just felt a little like basic compared to other luxury cars. So what's changed?
Nothing. This isn't the refresh. This is the 24.
Oh, dang it. That's right. Well,
But
nuts.
I don't find that with the interior because I like the older style. Like this thing has a ton of buttons, and thank God it does. I'm sick of getting in cars that have like a knob or something. So you're right. It doesn't look as nice in the center console. Some of the trim around like the cup holder and the cup holder cover and stuff looks pretty low grade, but infotainment is easy enough to use. This one had the sky cool gray interior. They're almost whitish, but they're like a very light blue with black and red stitching. Like it looked really cool. It had the sports steering wheel because they didn't have Super Cruise in this one, so it had the red centering line on the top. Yeah, no, I don't have any problems with the interior. I actually think it's really nice, except for like the parts I said. And with the 10-speed, I was wondering if the drive, the fun disappears, and the manual is better. It's funny, I said in my video, like, it's not a great manual because it's not great. It's good. But everyone's thinking I said it was a terrible manual and all these owners are coming after me. It's like, it's a good manual, but they're like, it's one of the best ever. But there are guys who've like, oh, nothing but GM V8 cars. And I'm like, well, yeah, it is compared to those, but go drive an S2000 or a modern Miata or an old M3. Like, those were better transmissions.
Even the new Mustang.
Well, I don't know. I think
New Mustang has a good manual.
I think I didn't find it any better than this one. Yeah. But the reason being, and it's same thing with the STI for Subaru, is you have that much power and torque going through your manual. It can't be as fluid. Like it has to be robust to handle that. And the same with like an all-wheel drive car. Like I was like, oh, they're so like chunky to get in gear. And I said, well, it's because of the 1% out there that want to do red line drops. You need to be able to handle all that torque.
Yeah,
getting twisted in the transmission. But anyway, that's a different topic. We don't have much time to talk about everything today, but the one thing that I was not expecting on this is if you drive, so the exhaust has 3 modes: Tour, Sport, Track, and you don't use Track on the road. Not that I ever would.
No, never.
No, never. Like I said, in Tour, it's pretty quiet and it drives nice. You put it even in Sport, and every time you get off the accelerator at 3,000 RPM or higher, it just burbles and backfires and pops. Like it sounds like those kids who two-step their BMW turbos and GTRs and Supras. Like it just doesn't stop. And in Track, it's loud, but in Sport, it's still pretty loud. And if you do it at a higher, like if you let go at like 4,500 and you have the windows open, because I thought, oh, maybe it's the cars pumping an exaggerated sound to me. No, that was, and the CT5 is pretty soundproof because it's a luxury car. So when I put the windows down, I was like, oh my God, it's that loud.
Yeah.
But it's hilarious. I just loved going around doing it. And the 10 speed's good. Like upshifts are very fast and downshifts aren't super quick because an automatic can only do so much, but it blips the throttle perfectly. And then that soundtrack starts and you forget about how quick it was or wasn't.
Well, and we've said it many times before. This 10-speed in Fords, not so great, but in GMs, very good.
Getting better in Fords, but no, it's true.
Yeah.
And then of course this thing handles really well. This one's less subtle. That was something I always liked with the one I had before, was the sparkly black. But this one in the I should know what this blue's called. Very bright, but it looks awesome in the sun. It changes colors pretty much.
Velocity blue? No, I can't.
No, it starts with an M, Milano, or I don't know. I just wrote the article. I should know, but it has the bronze wheels, which are a must, and it has the 2 carbon fiber packages, which are a must. It just, yeah, like you said, our tastes differ slightly. I've always had a bit of a V8 American edge to my cars. I like a lot of Japanese and European too, but this is like the sophisticated hooligan car.
Yeah.
So that makes like juvenile noises, which I'll never grow out of.
I think we need to do a comparison next year once it gets warm again with the facelifted version of this and the new M5. Just saying.
I know, and people will be like, well, the M5 has like 50 more horsepower. It also has 1,200 pounds more weight. So as long as it's not raining, because when it rained during my review, and the 305s aren't big fans of the rain.
Yeah. Well, all right.
And sticking with V. See how I
yes. Oh, very
Cadillac announced that the Lyric's going to have a V.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you know what? This is what Cadillac needs to do. They did this in the mid 2000s, where they started Ving everything. Remember the STS V, the XLR V. So
and then there were V Sports.
Yeah, they tried it like M Sport. That was not a good idea.
And now V is essentially M Sport, because Blackwing is what V used to be back in the day.
Yeah. So it's funny though, because like the Escalade V, like that's pretty bonkers, but it's not a Blackwing. It's got the Blackwing engine, and a way heavier truck, but So no details, just that they're going to do it, and it's going to have this wider bodywork, and it looks pretty cool with this flared out. Like I can't imagine what kind of tires they're putting under it.
I just wanted to confirm that is it, right? Because I believe so. The bumper looks different. Yeah, everything looks different. Okay. Cool,
see, the tires has the little flare out there. They haven't said power, but this is the GM platform of a million faces. But this really shares a lot with the Blazer, and the Blazer RS, is that the super? No, what's the one super powerful?
The SS that hasn't come out yet is 550-ish.
550, 557, I think. So everyone expects this would be more, and I agree. I don't think it would get up to the 754 of the Escalade V. It just doesn't have that size battery, but it'd probably be in the 600s. But I think like the Escalade V and the Silverado EV RST, that 754, whatever it is only when you do launches. Otherwise, it's much less. And Chevy and Cadillac won't tell you what. I had it Silverado EV, so in a future podcast, I'll talk about it, but it's much closer to what the work truck makes, which is like 510 or something like that.
Yeah, and we've seen that with other things too. Like the Ioniq 5N has 40 more horsepower in boost mode. The Taycons all have more power in boost mode.
Yeah. But this is like 200 horsepower.
I'm just excited because like I really like the Lyric. I think the Lyric might be one of the better cars on this platform. And if Cadillac wants everyone to take it seriously in this new EV era, it needs to bring V there, because V is a really successful part of the Cadillac formula. So yeah, put it on your best current vehicle.
And the crazy thing is, like, the regular top Alliance already has like 510 horsepower. It's not like it's slow, but you're right. You just need that fancy flashy one.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to, this is what I teased at the start. Kyle got to drive one of his favorite cars.
Yes. I'm not sure if it's quite at the same level as the CT5 is for you, but I do really like the Elantra N, because it's just a hooligan. It's what we remember sport compacts being. Now that the Civic Type R is basically what would happen if Porsche made a hot hatch, and it priced as such. The Elantra is a little rough around the edges. They've tidied it slightly. It's not quite so tail happy now. But that's about it. They haven't messed with the basic formula. I had the manual, which is only okay, like you were saying. It's not a great manual transmission, but
oh god, now the N owner's going to come after you.
Yeah, and I'll just be like, drive any of its competitors.
Yeah. I think people mistake transmissions feeling good if the car's fast. It's like that. We're talking about actually engaging the gear. Like, you slam it in and it hugs the road, but that has nothing to do with the transmission.
Yeah, and I just found with this, it's really hard to the clutch is really hard to judge. That's something I don't really like about it, is that I can never feel like I've really gotten comfortable with the clutch. But fun, sounds great still. I think it looks good. I'm not sure if it looks better than the original. I know some people didn't like the blacked out front end, but yeah, it's just a lot of fun. And one of the fun things that didn't make it into the article, but I really should talk about, is way back we had our friend from Hyundai Canada, Jen McCarthy, on to talk about N owners and empowering auto. And you and I, Mike, went to this N owner meetup, the biggest in the country, just to see what it was all about. And it's really cool to see an automaker embrace an enthusiast part of the community. There were, 80 cars ish, a bunch of modified N's. There was a Kia Stinger.
There was this modified first year base model Genesis Coupe.
Yeah, that was weird. I don't know who brought that.
Yeah.
And it was just nice to see, because, this is still an important part of the culture. And I think this is just a wicked deal. That's the other thing that I can't stress enough, is that while the other cars are getting expensive, this is like $35,000 all in the US, or $41,000 in Canada. And I can't think of another car at that price, new off the lot, that would be as impressive at a track day as this.
So this, just before we move on, this could get me banned from 3 manufacturers, but the last 3 cars we talked about is sort of like my life progression. Like, this is the 20 to early 30-year-old Mike would want this, and then the mid 30s to like 50-year-old Mike wants that CT5-V Blackwing, and then the senior citizen Mike wants that Lyric V.
I mean, senior citizen Mike has some pretty sporty taste. Good for him.
Yeah. Well, it's just, that's the most sophisticated, like this one was, like you said, it's like this crazy raw track car that's not the most practical to live with. And then the CT5-V Blackwings, both. And then with the Lyric, it's just going to be a really fast, really, comfy premium electric.
Back in my day, we had to shift our own gears. Sure thing, Grandpa.
Back in my day, we had gears. Sure, Grandpa.
What are those? And we filled the cars with old dino juice. Anyway.
All right, so 3 quick-fire Porsches.
Yes.
All 911s. First, Carrera T is back for 2025. Kyle, tell us what that means.
It is the only way to get a manual in a non-GT 911 next year. And it, I guess that makes sense. Like, turn the T into more of the enthusiast model. I'm a little shocked at some of the details on this thing. They're really leaning into that manual transmission thing with some gear pattern stickers in the windows, a puddle light that shows it's a little silly, but
I'm sure it's leaning into like manual windows, manual door locks.
Yeah, manual everything. Yeah, so that's I don't love that, but I'm sure it's going to drive fabulously, because the T is traditionally the lightest, most enthusiast-oriented 911. So cool.
Manual window crank or manual starter. Okay. So then 911 Turbo is getting hybrids next year. Not going to just be hybrids. So I assume they're going with the Cayenne Panamera with like turbo-y hybrid.
I mean, who didn't see this coming, right? Like the GTS is now that high-performance hybrid. So and Porsche made a big deal about the fact that it was just as quick as the outgoing turbo. And so it's like, well, okay, that means the next one kind of has to adopt this and just turn up the boost. So yeah, I expect, 700 horsepower? Does that seem fine now? I don't think a 911 has done 700 since the GT2, but the outgoing Turbo S is 640. So yeah, I think that's my guess.
What's the Cayenne put out? I know it's a different engine, but...
Oh, the SE hybrid, or the Turbo SE hybrid or whatever, is like 790.
Yeah, so yeah, I think 700 is safe.
Yeah.
Now, if it's just there was like another car with a gas engine in the back and electric motor in the front that makes not quite 700 horsepower, but I think I smell a comparison for next year.
Yeah, weird.
And the final 911 story is the sad one. The naturally aspirated engine will be dying in the GT3. And once again, who didn't see this coming?
Boo.
Just happy it lasted this long.
Boo.
Boo saving the world and environment.
They sell like 2,000 of these a year. Like, I'm sorry. And also half of them are driving what, like 1,000 miles a year? I think it was Bentley, like 20 years ago, when people really started paying more attention to emissions. Bentley CEO at the time made a point that our entire lineup doesn't pollute as much as all the Corollas that Toyota builds a year, because even though they are polluting in terms of miles, they don't. There's not many of them, and they don't do a lot of mileage each year. So
Yeah.
I don't think. I love EVs, and I am all for better, more sustainable cars, but like, this is such a niche vehicle. Can't we just keep it? I'm also a little biased because I just drove a related car with the same engine, or a variant of that engine, on the weekend, and wow. So yeah, I'm sad, but I guess it's bound to happen.
And moving on to our last story, Kia wants to jump into the pickup truck business, which we've been talking about for a while and they've mentioned for a while. I don't think anyone anywhere expected it to be this. It is strange. The profile, side profile, is probably its most complimentary angle, and even it looks a little odd. But yeah, like, I assume this is built on the Telluride platform. I don't think it's gonna be on a Genesis rear-wheel drive based platform.
So it's a unibody.
I'd assume so. I don't see them going like. I would, again, just assuming, but I think they'd be going after like Mavericks and Ridgelines, and not going after like Colorados and Gladiators. And
yeah, I'm just curious because, as far as I know, this isn't confirmed for the North American market, right? And so my thinking was, well, maybe they are going after the European truck market, the midsize one, and those are all body on frame. So
true.
I thought maybe this would go it. It's not pretty, but I really appreciate that it looks just like the Lego pickups I made when I was a kid. I don't know.
Actually, that's a good comparison, because it is like, if you like, in theory, it's really good because it has a low hood, a giant cabin, so you have more space, and like, you don't need a huge bed. But yeah, when you make the Lego pickups where the body be too big, to me, I've been calling it the truck version of the Homer car, where there's like 3 different pieces put together. You know those things you see on Instagram where it's like a Corvette front end, then a pickup chassis, and then like an El Camino bed or something? It kind of, yeah, I mean, it's better than that, but it's just sideways, it looks like a Gladiator kind of, but from the front.
Yeah.
We'll see if we get it.
Yep.
And if it changes. All right, so we're going to take another quick break on the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors. And when we come back, we are going to have a question of the day that relates to next week. Then we'll have Colin on to talk about F1. We are going to, well, I guess we'll talk about what's happening next week as well. Then we'll be back. Swapping out your tires? There's nothing like it. With eBay, you'll find the feel you're looking for, from smooth highway rides to grip for rough terrain. Get all the tires you need at prices you'll love. eBay, things people love. Okay, welcome back. We have a special guest here to talk about something that's just around the corner. If you could just introduce yourself and what you do.
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having me on, Mike. My name is Ian McKinney. I am a senior product manager for Bridgestone. I have been at Bridgestone for about 15 years now, the first decade of which was actually on the product development side. So actually designing consumer tires, whether they were OE or replacement. I've had my hands in all of that. And more recently, I've moved to our corporate office, which is in Nashville, Tennessee. As I mentioned, doing product strategy. My primary focus for North America is the touring segment, the performance segment, and the winter segment. So I've got those 3 kind of in my basket. They're geared more toward the car side of the house than maybe the truck side of the house. So that's my specialty. And I'm really glad to be here to talk about winter tires today.
Yeah, that's the topic, because it's getting colder in most of North America right now. Some places worse than others. So that kind of leads to a good place to start, is what is the difference between an all season and all weather and a winter tire?
So there are a lot of differences between the 3 styles of tires, but if we needed to boil it down to some main categories, it would be tread compounding and the pattern itself. So let's start in the all-season world, because that's probably what a lot of people are very familiar with. You've got tread compounds that need to do a lot of things, kind of a jack of all trades. You've got to operate in the summers when it's really warm. You got to be able to handle rain. You got to be able to operate when it starts to get cold at night. It's asked to do a lot of things. And also it's asked to be quiet and wear a long time, and have appropriate levels of handling and all that stuff. So as I mentioned, kind of a jack of all trades, do everything pretty well, but not get too specific in one area. As you start to migrate into, let's call them all-weather tires, where they have achieved that 3-peak mountain snowflake capability, that level of winter performance, the compounding starts to shift a little bit more towards cold weather performance, where the compound is staying pliable as temperatures start to get below freezing. Things start to harden up a little bit, and you need that same level of performance that you would expect out of a all-season touring tire, that level of comfort, that level of grip, but in cold conditions, and also be capable to handle, a few inches or centimeters of snow here or there, and get you through the occasional winter storm without, going all the way to the extreme of the winter tire. And as we kind of migrate over toward the winter tire, some of the visual differences people are going to see is that as you go from all season to all weather and then into winter, the pattern gets a lot more void in it, and the pattern starts to look a lot more aggressive, a lot more cut up. So there's going to be a lot of sipes, a lot of slots in the pattern. A lot of times as you get to that dedicated winter space, the tread pattern is going to shift to being directional a lot of times. So really focusing on winter traction. So it's going to be a very aggressive, very directional, very angular pattern to kind of pack in and trap snow. And then from a compounding side, it's a compound that's meant to stay pliable in really cold conditions. So as the temperature goes down, rubber, just like many other things, water, rubber, anything starts to harden as it gets colder. And you get to what's called a glass transition temperature. That everything has this, where it gets so cold, things become brittle and will break, kind of like glass. For a dedicated summer tire, that glass transition temperature might be close to like 5 to 7 degrees Celsius. And so if you're driving a summer tire on a morning where it's really cold, or you think, hey, I'm just going to kind of run these all year round and see what happens, it can get so cold that, let's say you're driving your summer tire and you hit a pothole, or you hit a particularly rough set of railroad tracks, you can actually fracture and break your tread. Like you could break the tread block because it's become so brittle. Now, that's a summer tire. That's an extreme example. But when you're looking at all season tires, there's some of that too, where they start to lose a little bit of their performance as it starts to cool off. And so as the temperatures get cool and you get more into that dedicated winter season, the benefits of the dedicated winter tire are going to start showing themselves, because it's meant to have glass transition temperatures that are so low that humans probably aren't going to see it. And if you ever get that cold, you're not going anywhere. And so the performance you're getting, regardless of snow, but even on just like a flat, dry road, at that cold temperature is going to see the benefit of the winter tire versus maybe just a traditional all-season tire, because it stays pliable and it's able to grip the road, and kind of those fine micro textures on the surface of the road. The tire can comply to those a little bit better than, say, an all-season tire that's starting to get brittle and can't kind of conform to the micro textures of the road.
Okay, that's a lot of great information. I think that's the key, is people think it's snow-based and not always temperature-based, which it is. And that kind of leads to the next question. It's pretty obvious what kind of tire someone in northern Quebec or Alaska should have versus someone in, say, Texas, Florida, or even in Tennessee. But for the people in between, what advice would you give them when they're trying to decide between an all-weather and a winter tire?
That's a great question, and there's so much nuance there. And a lot of it is the consumer or the customers, how comfortable are they in winter weather? If you're in a climate where, the winter can get cold, but you're not expecting to get dumped on by snow, you might get the occasional, 2 to 3 snowstorms per year. And you live in a community that, if they're not prepared for that, and the expectation is that, like, you're not going to be asked to come into the office, and the kids are probably going to have school canceled, and you've prepared for that winter storm to kind of ride it out for a couple of days and then get back to life as normal, you could probably be fine with an all-weather tire, where it allows you to be capable. You can get to the store, you can run your errands if you need to. But if you have the opportunity to just stay home and ride it out, you're fine. As you start getting further north or in climates that are more severe for winter weather, if snow and ice are going to be a regular part of your life for several months at a time, and you're going to be expected to commute to work or take the kids to school, and you expect to see that snow and ice and slushy conditions pretty regularly, then diving in and getting the dedicated winter product is the recommendation that I would have for that person, because you're going to not only get the benefit, but you're going to get to reap the rewards of that performance level on a daily basis or a weekly basis, versus someone who, if you're only seeing a winter storm and you're only thinking you're going to need to, make it through some snow or some ice on a handful of occasions, then is the economics of it, like you buying that second set of tires, are you really going to reap the benefit? You could probably get by with the all-weather tire. So some of it is, the environment around you. And then the other part is, what's your confidence level of a driver in winter conditions? If you're someone that is less confident, or you just feel like you need that extra security of knowing without a doubt in your mind that I'm going to be fine, even if I only have to go through snow or ice 3 to 4, 5 times a year, but that peace of mind of having a winter tire helps you, then by all means, go ahead and get the winter tire. But if you're relatively confident and you don't expect to have winter weather as a regular part of your daily life in the winter, then the all-weather tire is probably appropriate.
And I guess to a degree too, with the confidence thing, it can also be what you're driving. Like I have a manual rear-wheel drive coupe. So I get an aggressive winter tire. I throw all the handling away in the winter to make sure I can make it out of my street if it snows. Whereas living in the Toronto area, it's really hit and miss how much we actually get. So if you have like we have all weather on my wife's Subaru right now. It was more so to see how it would go through the year, but it was pretty good. But I understand what you're saying. Like I'll probably go back to winter this year just because we'll probably due for a big snowfall. But we're definitely one of those areas where it's you never know.
And you made a really good point there about, the conditions and people a lot of times are beholden or, recency bias. What was last winter like? If you went through a particularly mild winter, then people are going to say, hey, maybe I just need the 3-peak Mount Snowflake level of an all-weather tire, and that'll be fine. And then unfortunately, these things are cyclical and you get hit by a particularly hard winter and you say, wow, I think I'd like to go back to that dedicated winter product. And, there's so much of it about, is what you're expecting going into the winter matching up with what the reality is going to be. And so in some cases, once again, back to the peace of mind portion of it, people would rather have the dedicated winter tire because you just never know what that next season's going to be like. And if it doesn't match your expectation of the mild winter you had last year, at least now you have the safety and the benefit of the extra performance.
So there's a lot of people who are maybe been driving for a long time and have sort of old school thinking of, I've always had all seasons, I'm fine. Is it more important, or why is it more important to have a winter tire today than it was maybe like 20, 30, 40 years ago?
That's a really good question. I don't know that the necessity for a winter tire is any different than it's ever been. Like I think consumers still need their vehicles to get through the snow and get through the ice and handle cold weather. And we've had that since vehicles have been around. So I think that the need for the consumer is probably the same. The level of performance is probably the same. What I think has changed as time has gone on as vehicles have modernized, and you can attest to this, but the capability of vehicles is so much better now than it's been in the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, that the type of trouble you can get yourself into based on the capability of the vehicle can give some people maybe a higher level of confidence than maybe that is matching what the reality needs for them. Where, hey, I've got this all-wheel drive vehicle, great traction control, all-season tires. I can get up to speed. I can get wherever I need to go. And that might be true, but it can also get you into trouble pretty quick because it's getting you up to a speed, and now you've hit a patch of ice or some packed snow that you aren't prepared for. And now you're going much faster than you probably should be on a set of all season tires, and you're not able to react and stop or turn in time. And now the consequences of that overconfidence are much higher now too, because cars have not gotten less expensive over the years. And so any type of unfortunate miscalculation can lead to a very expensive bill now. So while the needs of consumers are the same, like you need to be able to stop in ice and snow, you got to get enough traction to be able to get out of your driveway and get to work. That's always been there, but people's confidence level has maybe risen as technology advancements have increased. But then when things go south, it's nice to have the reserve capability of a three-peak mountain snowflake tire there to kind of catch you when you run out of talent.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's a bit of an education thing, which has always been sort of what even a tire company is trying to get across. Because I think too, like tires keep getting lower profile, and you're getting SUVs with ultra high performance all seasons, or sometimes even summer tires. And I don't think consumers are always aware of just how high performance their tires are. And then they just think, oh, it's all season, I'll be fine in the snow. Right. And then it's not what an all season was like 20 years ago. So they can get themselves in trouble that way too. I see a lot of high end SUVs stuck in the snow around here when the first snowfall hits.
Exactly. So much of people's thinking is related to the vehicle. I've got a big SUV. It's going to be fine in the snow. And the misconception that anything that has all-wheel drive means I'm going to be fine no matter what. It doesn't matter the tire. It's an all-wheel drive car. It's a big SUV with four-wheel drive. I'm going to be fine. And they don't realize, because few people get the opportunity in regular life to test these tires back to back to back, to actually see how stark the contrast in performance is. And we try to do that at our Bridgestone Winter Driving School in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, every year. It's a course we put on for dealers and media, but it runs all season for walk-ups. So consumers, regular folks can come and do our Bridgestone Winter Driving School, where you're driving vehicles on a dedicated course on the side of a mountain, going really fast, doing some really fun stuff in the snow, but also getting real world examples of like, hey, this is what a UHP all season actually feels like in the snow. Now we're going to go step over into this identical vehicle that has all weather. And now we're going to step into a third vehicle that has dedicated winter, and make you drive that same course. And the outcomes and the comments coming out of those sessions, seeing kind of a light bulb come on for dealers and consumers and media members who maybe haven't experienced it. It is a stark contrast, and people walk away with a whole new appreciation for what a winter tire actually does versus what they thought it could do against their current knowledge of all season capability.
Yeah, I was there last winter. There's a video and an article if people want to search it. And yeah, we did exactly what you said. And I mean, I already knew, but it was in those conditions going a little more extreme. It was interesting to see how well the all-weather did. But then you get in the winter and it's just so much more sure-footed, especially against the all-season. So before we wrap up, just one last question. We've talked about sort of some myths people have with vehicles, but what's sort of the biggest myth you hear about a winter tire?
There are a couple that come to my mind initially. One we touched on a little bit earlier, in that they think of them as snow tires and not winter tires. So in my mind, people will run the all seasons as long as they can, and then they'll say, well, I'll swap them over once I see a winter storm. And there's a misconception there that, it can be deep in December before you live in a location where you've gotten lucky, there hadn't been any snow. I'm going to keep running my all seasons. You're deep into December and the temperatures are getting quite cold, but you haven't seen any precipitation yet. You're still seeing a degradation in your vehicle's performance or your tire's performance, because it's related to the temperature and not necessarily related to the precipitation that's on the road. So that's why we refer to them as winter tires and not snow tires, because the amount of performance that your winter tire is going to be able to provide, even on a dry road in cold conditions, is going to be enhanced versus an all-season tire on a cold road. And I mentioned it comes down to the pliability of the rubber and the tire being able to kind of envelop the road, envelop the micro-texture surface to give you enhanced traction and grip on that snowless, iceless road in cold temperatures. You're going to get better grip in that winter tire than you would in all season at really cold temperatures, just because it's starting to get brittle. So I think that's the first one. The second one that jumps to my mind is kind of more of a modern phenomenon, and it's the concept to consumers that an all-weather tire and a dedicated winter tire are essentially the same thing. And you mentioned it very briefly before. There is a difference. Now, they both will have the three-peak mountain snowflake rating certification, which is great. That's kind of a threshold. And so for folks who might not be familiar with how that works, there is an industry standard control tire that they run every year in the snow, and it gets a baseline grade. The candidate tire to achieve the three-peak mountain snowflake rating needs to have traction, whether it's a braking traction or a spin-up traction, depends on the type of test you're doing, that is at minimum 10% higher than that control tire. And once you've achieved that threshold, then you can mark the three-peak mountain snowflake rating. But once you're above that, there's no way to deviate or understand the difference. So you can have an all-weather tire that is 10% better than that control tire, and you can have a dedicated winter tire that's 40% better than that dedicated control tire, but they're both marked with that same emblem on the sidewall. And so a lot of times people see that three-peak mountain snowflake rating and say, I'm good. I'm good for any kind of snow condition I'm going to see, without understanding that there are very different layers once you get beyond that threshold of three-peak mountain snowflake rating that is going to have a huge impacts on the level of performance you're going to see. And so we've spent some time previously talking about, what are some of the differences, and where might somebody need an all-weather versus a dedicated winter. And it's really just, an all-weather is going to handle well in snow, and it's going to do what it needs to do. But if you're in snow and ice every day, you're really going to do yourself a huge benefit in staying with a dedicated winter tire than you will with an all-weather tire.
Yeah, my testing last year, like I said, it was a mild winter, but we did get a bit of snow and slush and ice. And the all-weather was good in slush and snow, but it was the ice where you notice the difference. Without the sipes and the compound that's designed to stick to ice, that's where you notice the more grip. And where I live, it's, below freezing, above freezing, below freezing. So they get a lot of ice here. So just one last thing. It's a phenomenon you probably don't see much where you are, but on the opposite end, there's a lot of people around here who, especially with used cars, put on winters and leave them all year. And I see them in summer when it's like 95 degrees out. I'm just thinking that must feel so soft and squishy, and your tire must just be disintegrating. But you're not saving money by just running winters either. It's the same thing, right?
Exactly. So, we talked about the benefit of having an all-weather tire or that dedicated winter tires, that they stay pliable when it's really cold. Well, the opposite end of that spectrum, you get into summer and it starts getting really warm, and it gets more than just pliable. It's getting so soft. You're getting to warm butter levels of rubber, where it basically, you're going to get so much shear forces because the block elements, because they're so cut up with the siping, the block elements are already a little bit weaker because you want to comply to the surface and be able to grab and trap snow. And then the compound itself is already designed to be softer at cold conditions. You're going to get so much shear forces as the tire is rolling and turning that you're just wearing away your tires so much faster in warm conditions. So the inverse, we always say it's probably a good idea to start coming off of your all-season tires if the regular, the average temperature is between 5 and 7 degrees. The opposite's true in the spring. You start to get above 5 to 7 degrees, it's time to start thinking about considering putting on your all-season tires. Now, it's based on your locality. You'll understand whether or not you should expect another winter storm or two going forward, and that's a decision you can make. But once you start getting into May, June, July, you've got to get those dedicated winter tires off there, or you're just accelerating the wear to a point that they won't be any good to you come that next year. Now, what I will see is that people will run their winter tires for a few seasons, and you'll know going into it, based on your history, that, hey, this is probably the last season I'm going to get out of these winter tires. And in that case, you make it to the end of the season and you say, there's not really enough tread depth for me to feel confident going into the next year with, a full season of winter ahead of me on these tires. So I will just wear them out. I'll burn through them this summer, and then I will get a new set of dedicated winter tires coming into the fall. You'll see that occasionally, and I think that's a reasonable approach. But if you have any intention of keeping that tire for additional seasons, then you've got to get off of them once it starts warming up.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, all your advice has been good. And I think for those who weren't too familiar with winters or had some brief ideas about them, you've given a lot of good information. And it just sort of reinforces that in areas that do see 4 full seasons, it's probably a good idea to have 2 sets of tires, or at least in all weather. So I thank you for coming on in, and I hope to hear from you again. Maybe in the spring we can talk about summer versus high performance all seasons and that end of the spectrum.
That would be wonderful. Thank you for having me. Would love to have that future conversation with you.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, that was a lot of good info about winter tires and winter driving. I mean, it's something I've been trying to preach for a while, but it's good to hear an expert put it in better words than I ever could. So moving on to our question of the week. This is based on where we're going next week. SEMA, we're going to be doing an extra podcast live from the show, and we'll have lots of guests in the next few to several weeks from the show. So I thought I'd make a very broad, open-ended question. What would you build for SEMA? Because although SEMA's showing off specific bits and pieces that manufacturers are making, some people just build crazy things to show like what they can do.
Yeah.
So since it's my question, I will start. I really only have one this week, but maybe I'll think of one when you say something. So this is something that kind of happened in the reverse back in the day. I don't know if you remember the people would take the Pontiac Fiero and they'd rip out the slow engines in it and they'd shove in like front wheel drive Cadillac V8s because you could just put the whole transmission and everything right in. And or even like later on they'd put an Ecotechs out of Equinoxes because that was like 182 horsepower. So anyway, I want to do the reverse. I'm going to get myself either an STS from the 90s, early 2000s because they look cool, or maybe I'll go all in with like a Eldorado. And I am going to take the Z06's drivetrain out of the new Corvette and shove it in the front.
Where's the Fiero? I was really hoping that you were going to say, I'm going to put an Iron Duke in one of those.
Put a 90 horsepower engine in a 4,000 pound
like, I'm taking this doing it in reverse thing very seriously, and I thought you meant I'm going to take a big car and make it even slower. Okay.
Well, Tim Allen already did he didn't, but that company that he's involved with did the twin star with 2 engines.
Yeah, so I remember that. Okay.
I'm going to put a 650 horsepower engine to the front wheels and let her rip.
Oh man. Okay. All right. It's funny you mentioned the Fiero because my idea is a mid-engine car as well. Well, I would make it a mid-engine car. So I have a soft spot for the Honda Del Sol. I've always liked one. There's one in my building that I'm really fond of too. And I think it needs, well, I would say like an NSX, a 90s era NSX V6 in the back. But then you're basically just making a smaller, less attractive NSX. So maybe the Type R engine needs to go in there.
I was going to say, we're going to buy one. You know, it would work actually, and it would be cheap, and you could probably still pick up anywhere. Just get a Accord or Acura V6 with the manuals, because they came with manuals for years.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of power for a Del Sol.
Yeah. So my idea is basically take the Type R engine and rework the Del Sol and turn it into this wicked cool, not quite track rat, because I want it to be a little more refined than that. But yeah, that's my idea, is 320-ish horsepower Del Sol that's rear engine, rear drive.
So you're bringing back the old Clio days.
Yeah, except the V6 isn't, except it's not like 3 feet off the ground. It should ideally be a little lower.
Well, I mean, that'd work with what they had.
Yeah.
I love that car. It's funny you say it, because I was thinking of when I had my Cadillac engine or the Corvette engine idea. I was like, maybe I'll put it in the back of a little hatchback GM car. But then I remember there are none. So,
well, there was the Cruise hatchback for like 2 years there.
Yeah, and that'd be probably the only thing you could try, because I mean, it'd be hilarious in a Spark, but you probably have to have like the world's biggest fender flares to get it to fit.
Honestly, I feel like most of my ideas are actually just that mold of like take an engine from one car and stick it in its smaller hatchback sibling, but put it in the back. Like do it with a Mini and a M3 engine. Do it. I don't care. I've got a bunch of these ideas.
And you know what? The easiest and one day I'm sure the most affordable and the best long term will be doing it with EV engines. I mean, Dodge is bringing that muscle car with one, and once they make sort of what Dodge is trying to do with the battery pack that goes in your trunk and is maneuverable, then yeah, like you can get so much power out of them. You just need a place to put the battery. You don't have to worry about all these weird moving parts that need to mesh together. Like
it's pretty straightforward, but people will hate it because there's no sound.
That's all right. When my Suzuki X90 is ripping down the road doing a wheelie.
Pulling 10-second quarter miles.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a question of the week.
Yeah.
Watch us go to the show and some of these ideas are there. Well, I'm pretty sure my first idea won't be there. I don't think anyone would waste that money and resource, but
we can hope.
All right. We are going to take another break. And when we come back, we will have Colin Wood on to talk F1. And then Kyle will be back to talk about what's next.
Yep.
Picture this. You're in the garage, your favorite room in the house, and you're tuning up your engine with parts you found on eBay. Every piece is just locking perfectly into place. You step back to admire your work, hands covered in grease, and because you're committed to driving that thing further than the odometer can handle, you start to think to yourself, you know what, I could probably also use some new brakes, some shocks and struts, and this baby deserves a new air filter. So you head right back to eBay. You can find any part you need there, it's unreal. From wipers and headlights to cold air intakes, exhaust systems, and even that turbo you've had on your mind, eBay is the stocked garage of your dreams. And you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. Because eBay knows DIY fixes can be major, and mods are always intense, so you need to know that these parts guaranteed to fit every time before you dive in wrench first. And in the off chance you order a part and it doesn't fit, send it back, simple as that. You know what you love more than the car itself is driving it. You're serious when it comes to engine maintenance, and you're locked in when you're headed into a build. And that's exactly why you start with eBay, minor fix or complete overhaul. You want to get your ride back on the road, and you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. So eBay created My Garage, where all you have to do is add your ride's info and get the exact parts that fit. When you see the green check, you're a click away from that part clicking perfectly into place. So now that you know all that, imagine standing at that open garage door looking at your car you love more than anything, knowing that anything is possible. Whether it's keeping it on the road forever or turning it into something that's never been on the road before. Because with eBay, your garage just got a whole lot bigger. Get all the parts you need at prices you love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. Okay, welcome back. We have Colin Wood on again to talk F1 news and rumors. Again, we haven't talked since the last race in Mexico, and by the time this airs, Interlagos will be done too. But let's just talk about what's happened over the last week, and we'll touch on the last race a bit.
Yeah, it's been a wild time. Thanks for having me. It's your favorite race of the year, Mike.
It is. I'm excited.
Yeah, Interlagos is always great. So I'm also looking forward to it. And I can't recall. I saw some rumors earlier in the week of threats of rain, but you never know. There's anything can happen here. And the amazing thing to me is that it's such a short track, and the times are relatively like it's quick lap times. And usually that sort of indicates that, the performance of the cars has exceeded the track, and that it's sort of gone beyond that. But that's not true here. Like it's interesting that the track has continued to be a great track to race at, even though the cars have gotten bigger and faster and all that stuff, and other tracks that got sort of boring as a result of that didn't happen here. So,
well, I think the big advantage here. First off, I just love the way the track's laid out too, because if you sit on the front straight, it's like stadium seating. You can see so much of the track from one spot. But it's, like you said, it's quick time, so that usually means small track like Monaco or something, where it's all congested. But there's two pretty decent straightaways here, and then there's some ridiculously tight corners, so it doesn't favor one car. So like you said, there's a lot of good passing, because someone dominates on the straights, could get repassed in the corners and then get back ahead in the straights. So it's good.
Yes. I wonder if that's a part of it, is that you really have that really tight section and then that huge run up across the front, the main straight, and you get that amazing run, and that allows you to a car that may be better handling can really catch. You can get on their tail and then get the slipstream and actually do it. So like there's usually loads of passing. There's lots of crashes, lots of chaos, and the weather too always seems to come about. So,
and like I said, that huge straight, not only is it a massive DRS zone, it's also uphill. So that kind of exaggerates the DRS because you're putting even less drag on your car. And then turn one's ridiculously tight. So dive bombs aplenty.
I always wonder, I've never been there obviously, but what it looks like in real life compared to, seeing it on TV, because it's never the same thing, right? Like I remember, I want to say, what's it called? Sonoma Raceway, like driving it on the first time I was going to go and actually drive it for something. And I thought, I'll play it on Gran Turismo, right? Like that was sort of my best sort of visual representation of it. And I was like, turn one's like, it's a bit of a hill. And then you get there in real life and you're like, oh, damn, like that's big. That goes up like straight up. So
yeah, even like just getting the VR for Gran Turismo 7 and doing some of these tracks, you're like getting a better sense of, there's a lot of elevation here that you didn't realize before. And then you say, right, you go to the track, it's there. Anyway, so maybe before we get into the quick rumors, just last week was quite the race again. And I have a feeling that after the week before, where no one really got penalized, especially Max, on these maneuvers because he was doing them within the limits legally of what the rules are written, they just got fed up. So this week, they just were like, okay, let's throw the book at him. And everyone wants the rules changed. I mean, they were going to change them before the race even, because they said in a driver's meeting, it was 19-1. And I wonder who that one driver was that didn't want the rules changed.
Yeah, right.
I wonder who it could have been. But I mean, Max fans say he's being unfairly punished and he's so smart, he's doing it legally. Non-Max fans say he was a cheater this whole time. I'm not really on either side, but I think the rule was worded so badly, it was taken away from the racing. So I think they should penalize these. Like let them go side by side. It shouldn't be, I'm ahead, I can run this guy off the track. Like that's not racing anymore.
No, it's not. But I do think they need to change the rules. I do think, again, like, I think Max was within them very, 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 very tightly in the U.S., in Mexico, in Austin, but then in the Mexico race was clearly not, right? So I think he got what was coming to him. It was a funny, weird reaction. Like you kind of want to hear like, what's your justification? And maybe he doesn't have one. Maybe he's just like, I got mad and I made a mistake. Like, and I lashed out, and he doesn't want to say that, so he just says, I don't want to talk about it. Right? Like I would prefer to hear, he's so candid in many other respects. I would like a candid response about like, no, I'm right but he doesn't say that. He hasn't come out and say that he's in the right. He just comes out and says, I don't want to talk about it. And that could be because that could be his silent admission that he knows he was wrong, but he's even during the race in the in-car when they talked about the penalties, he made jokes about like, oh my God, look how big that was. But he didn't say, he wasn't freaking out or yelling that it wasn't right. But I mean, we're not experts, but just as a fan, it seems like he's so dominant as a driver in equal cars. But when he gets challenged, this isn't the first time things like this happen. It's like he needs to do anything possible. And the rules is just a cycle. Like these rules were made because people got sick of the FIA, or I guess Formula One more so, deciding arbitrarily, sort of like an umpire, as to who should be penalized. And now they're saying, scrap the rules and go back to that. And then 5 years, people are like, no, you're never consistent. Put a rule in. So you can never please everybody. No, you can't. Although they probably should have consistent stewards. That would make a lot of sense, right? Having these, one-time or two-time stewards come in seems like a very odd decision for an organization like Formula One, who could certainly afford to pay anybody to come and be a steward, right? Like, it's weird.
And it was interesting at the end of the race because Lando got Charles, and it looked like if there's another 5 laps, he was going to get Carlos too. But that's all. There was a point as why Carlos was driving what he was driving, because he knew when the laps ended. So he got it. But Ferraris looked pretty dominant the last couple of races, along with Lando. I don't know if it's the track suited them. I mean, this is a very different track this week. So if they still do it here, then Ferrari seems to have surpassed McLaren. And the Constructors' Championship is going to be quite interesting. I mean, Red Bull is starting to fall back in third, and I don't know if they're going to really be up there anymore.
No, I don't think so. Although, so this plays into super many stories. It's like, so one, I do think that Ferrari has a legitimate chance at passing McLaren. Apparently, they need to outscore McLaren by 7.5 points for every race going forward. If they do that, they'll actually win the Constructors' Championship, which they haven't won since 2008. So that's a long time ago. But then that also plays into this story of, the rumor after, and we were joking about this before, the rumors that Sergio Perez will be out after the Brazilian race. And I know the rumor's always that it's always after the current race. I do think that Red Bull could finally be sitting there saying, well, look, like, we don't want to wind up third. Like, we just need it, like, and we don't need a guy who's on the podium, right? We just need a guy finishing like 4th or 5th or something, right? Like just giving us something, not 18th or crashing out or whatever, right? So they could be looking to move somebody in, but like, also, who the hell they're going to move in, right? Like,
yeah,
I was going to put Lawson after 2 days in the RB. It just doesn't make sense, right?
I was going to say, to counter that, Max is the guy who's just finishing 4th or 5th right now. So it's already too late. I think like they should have done this a while ago, because they can't keep up right now. And there's 5 races left. Like, it's not.
Yeah,
like, you have time to figure it out. This is
you're totally right. Game. Yeah, that time passed. They need to, it's the saying, shit or get off the pot, right? Like they needed to do that a long time ago.
Well, same with Lando. How you saying the 7.5 points? Like, last week kind of put him back on par after Austin losing those points, but he didn't really. He hasn't gained much over the last 2 weeks, so he needs to start winning or coming second, and Max needs to be in the lower top 10 at best. But I still say, if either one of them DNFs one of these races, it's either sealed or it becomes wide open. And I mean, Charles isn't that far out. I mean, if he swept the last 5 races, he could sneak in too. So you never know.
If he like, won a bunch in a row, and then maybe Lando and Max collide and knock each other out, and then that would be Ferrari's sweet dreams.
But there's no team orders there yet, because I mean, if there was, Carlos would have let him pass early in the race. So just like George and Lewis were, that was a great battle. Like, full respect to each other, just going hard at it. They knew like we were getting 5th and 6th, no matter sort of what happens. So.
Yeah. But I think at this point they can't really tell Lewis team orders. He'd be like, don't care. What are you gonna do? And they'd be like, we'll stop paying you at the end of your contract. And he'd be like, so I don't need your whatever that $6 million for the end of the year. He's like, I'm gonna get paid like a billionaire over at Ferrari. So
that's what they're saying with Ferrari too, right? Carlos was like, how do you like? Yeah, tell him, let Charles buy him. What's he got to lose if he says
exactly? And I love that. I love when they just go all out. So so maybe the good race. Yeah. So one of the most interesting continuous rumors, which is very curious for future years, is that I guess the discussions are back on that they could be racing in South Africa for 2027. So this is the Kyalami track, which I checked, and they have not raced at since 1993. So that's quite a while ago. But apparently that track just got the official FIA Grade 1 certification, which means that it can, in fact, host a Formula One race. That doesn't mean like everything's set. Like, that means the track is suitable for Formula One cars now. It's done all the work, which, that's the only reason they would do that work. And then I know, like, there's a lot of, obviously, Lewis Hamilton out about it. He said he'd love to, race in Africa, and it makes a lot of sense. South Africa is really far away, right? Like, from everywhere else. But I guess if you're coming across from, Australia, also really far away, right? That it could make sense. So I see it happening for sure, and it sounds like it's in the works. So
well, Mexico to Sao Paulo is not a short drive either.
No, that's true. Good point.
And I wonder how close it is to South Africa if you left from Brazil. Like, I don't know if it's closer than Europe or not. I mean, I'm not a geography major, but they're both down there in the Southern Hemisphere, so who knows?
Yeah, but I think they get pretty far apart. I was actually some random thing showed up on my Facebook feed the other day about some island that's actually like the most remote civilization in the world. And it's between like South Africa and like South America, sort of in the and Antarctica. It's this little like triangle. And I think it's like owned by Norway or something. And it's like 250 people live there. But I was like, I want to go visit that place. I don't know why, but yeah. So I was looking at something on a map recently. So it's not close. The other funny thing is there's this other side rumor that's come out, which it does look like Kyalami is the most likely, but apparently Rwanda is also being discussed as a potential future location. And sort of add to that rumor, this year's the prize giving ceremony, I hate that name, which is their Formula One Awards, is being held in Rwanda this year. So there's something going on, right? There's obviously some discussions, and so I think it makes sense if they're going to have to me, I'm just like, well, if you're going to have a race in Africa, you should probably have a couple. It's like just make it a part of the whole thing. Although it's dumb to say that because, like, what's the distance from Rwanda to, Johannesburg or something? So like that's it's probably farther from that. That's probably a bigger distance than I don't know, Montreal to Spain or something, right? Like
oh, for sure, yeah,
it's huge, right? So all going all the way from kind of the north to the south is it's not next door. So, but it's interesting to see. They could be having, maybe we'll see numerous Africa races in the near future.
Yeah, and the question too is what gets dropped, because the drivers already say it's too busy, so it's not like they're going to go add 2 races and get 25 lap or 25 races. So
no,
especially with that travel that you mentioned. So we'll see.
Yeah, and there's always other, like they're always talking, oh, we'll bring back South Korea, we'll bring back Turkey. There's a bunch of good tracks there. So yeah, there's almost, it'll be slim pickings, which I think again actually for Formula One is all the better. If they have more countries fighting for races than they do, then they can just charge more and more for every city when they want to come to, and just pile on the money. Formula One is just making it in droves right now. So
before I let you go, anything else to cover?
I think that's most of it. There's for this to sort of add to the excitement of the weekend. It'll be over by the time people watch this, but the looks like Verstappen's getting a 5-pace grid drop, not for his driving standards, but for a new power unit. I think just the ice. I think so. So it's only 5 spots, but that means that probably at best he's he'll be a bit back in the pack starting this race, which I feel like puts you in the danger zone, right? That turn one could make it sketchy. So you got to be careful, stay out of it. So
yeah, he qualifies first or second. He's down to 5th or 6th. It's not too bad. But if he only qualifies 4th or 5th, now suddenly he's right in the middle.
Yeah,
and you're right. Look what happened last race. First lap, 2 cars out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll let you go because we're kind of running out of time. Back to constructors thing will be interesting because I think a drought will stop. Because McLaren's 98 and you said Ferrari's 08. So those are 2 pretty big droughts, though. One of them is going to get it. I think Red Bull's not getting it. So
no, I don't think so either.
All right, awesome. We'll be back next week and we'll talk about the race that already happened to the listeners and go from there.
Sounds great. Enjoy.
Right, see you. All right, welcome back. I'm really looking forward to the race this week because, as Colin and I are talking about, it's my favorite track. I think it usually always is pretty entertaining. It's one of the, as I said then, it's one of those tracks that has 2 pretty big straights, but also crazy tight corners. So it isn't like a fast car or a slow car. You need to have that all-around car. And I think this is where we'll probably, by the time people hear this, it'll already have happened. But yeah, my prediction is I think this is where McLaren gets back up because I think they have the best all-around car, whereas Ferrari seems to have a very fast car and whatnot. But so next week, as I said, we head to SEMA. We leave Monday. We'll be back Thursday. We're doing some episodes there. Like I said, we're going to have a chance to take a look at the floor, and we'll have probably some stories on next week's podcast. There'll still be the regular one as well.
Yes.
So, and because of that craziness and helping organize it, I will have nothing to drive next week, which will give me a little break to catch up. Because this week, I am in a Ford Ranger with the new 2.7 V6 turbo, and I can't talk about it for a couple weeks, but it's a truck.
Whoa, it's a truck. I
actually got to do off-roading in it, which was pretty cool. But sorry, go on.
Yeah. Does that count as a drive impression? So Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because you've driven the Raptor now. I've driven the Raptor and the base engine, so I'm wondering if this is a Goldilocks kind of situation. I am in a Nissan Rogue for the week because we had a comparison kind of go sideways on us. So yeah, I'm driving the most practical thing I've driven in months, I think, and it's facelifted for this year, so it has some new tech, some new looks. It's, I think, when we did our mega comparison a few years ago, the Rogue was the best non-hybrid option, and so the question is if it still is. So I'll be able to talk about that a little bit more in the future, and then when I come home from our SEMA Madness next week, I will spend a couple days with the 2025 BMW M3. It is the base version. It's not the comp. It's not the all-wheel drive. It is just a manual sedan. It's not supercharged.
Yeah. But that comparison you brought up, I was thinking this before too. I want to redo that probably next summer, but now we can do like the hybrid edition. We'll get the 4 hybrids we had last time, but the Rogue will be hybrid. The Forester should be hybrid. So there'll be more hybrids. So
the Rogue won't be a hybrid till 2026 though. Dun, dun, dun.
Model year.
Yeah, but yeah, we might get it in the summer. But okay, yeah. I mean, look at that. Almost all of them will have hybrids by then because the Mazda CX-50 will
that
also
one too
have
gets
a hybrid.
that gets to be added. Yeah, so like all the major ones, I think, outside of the Tiguan. I'm sure there's others I'm forgetting, but
yeah.
Well, we'll wait for those to come out because, like you said, the Rogue came 3rd overall, best of the 9 hybrids. So does putting the PHEV drivetrain in it put it higher, or we'll have to wait and see.
Or will it lose for the same reason the Hyundai did, because it became too expensive with the plug-in?
True. We gotta get the Outlander in this time. I know that didn't work out last time.
Yes, now we can. Yeah, wicked.
All right. Well, that has been another episode. Kind of lengthy, but oh well. We will be back twice next week, so you get to hear from us twice. So this has been the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors. And until early next week, see you later.
So long, everybody.
Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY car fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. It's okay, because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything: brakes, headlights, cold air intakes, whatever you need, and it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need, at the prices you'll love, guaranteed fit every time. eBay, things people love.